Here we go. I think this is like very relevant to all of our kind of stuff. Um,
Is this the thing on the I think we've got
on
it right,
Veritas.
the
right?
Veritas, yeah, yeah. So Veritas Tenants Association reaches agreement with San Francisco's largest landlord to end 5 month debt strike in exchange for full rent cancellation. So
Wow.
yeah, excellent work by the tenants to organize and earn a seat at the table. Now let's make sure all tenants have a right to organize. Yeah, this is like really cool work. And it's like, I mean, I think it's like it's very on brand with like a lot of the stuff we've been talking about you know, yeah, obviously like, tenants unions and all that kind of stuff like that, but
Mm-hmm.
the ability to just yeah, just to kind of just keep doing your thing, just to yeah, I mean like with organization and everything like that, people like skilled organizers, people that know what they're doing and stuff, working with everyday people and just kind of like holding out and it's like it's pretty amazing. Like where was it? In here somewhere there's like I can't remember how much it was. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
more than 18,000 households had asked for over 289.4 million in rent and utility assistance as of last week. This amount is nearly 60% more than what is currently allocated to San Franciscans. So like
Fuck.
that's I mean that's
Fuck.
like a huge amount and like, you can imagine why like at the moment with all the stuff that's kind of going on.
Mm.
And yeah, it's yeah, so what was it? The VTA one, a written commitment from Veritas to cancel all remaining rent debt for Veritas tenants. So that's the debt that they've built up, like people not being able to pay their rent or whatever. They've accrued this debt sort of thing
Yeah.
that's being held over them. So that's, yeah, a commitment from Veritas to cancel that.
But can I
Uh,
say what they
oh, yeah.
did to what their strike was? They stopped paying that debt back, right?
Yeah.
So that it was phrased like the VTAs agreed to stop their strike of not paying their debts, and in return, Veritas is canceling the debts. And it's like that's not actually an agreement. Like that's just a huge dub. Like
Right.
Yeah.
they fucking win. Like
Yeah. Like they've
That's
conceded, like they've obviously like conceded
Yeah.
and the union has won,
That's
right?
a
You know
really
what I
good
mean?
note that you made, that it's not an agreement. These little sneaky little ways to make it look like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, we allow them to no, it's they were muscled out of this and
Right.
forced to
Mhm.
cough up. And that's why I think we need to keep pushing this point home, that when you organize, you're not like asking in a very persuasive way, you are making them. They have to.
Yeah. Malcolm X said, "Power only respects power."
That's right.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. That I mean that's the thing. It's like it's like they have like the power of capital, but then there's like people power of like just everyone just kind
Mhm,
of like
mhm,
being aligned, working
mhm,
towards common goals. So that's
mhm.
awesome. Yeah, yeah.
Can I add a
The
note on that, which is that from the organizing with London Renters Union that I've done? By the
yes,
way, organizing interview with the London Renters Union is out now. The first one that was last week's organizing interview. So if I've been talking about this for ages, if people, I hope people are hyped about it. Organizing interviews is a show where I talk to organizers and activists from around the world on my channel, Sophie from Mars, and I did one with London Renters Union professional organizer Claire. So go check that out.
Go check it out.
It was good. But I was gonna say this thing, like the biggest landlord in the whole of San Francisco is Veritas, which I looked them up and they're Veritas Investments firm. Like they're
yeah,
just a
yeah.
landlord who just like treating real estate as an investment, which is why they're
It's
such
their
faceless
portfolio. Yeah,
corporate pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's their portfolio.
Mm.
And one of the biggest landlords that London Renters Union has been fighting for ages is called Clarion. And I don't mind naming them because they're fucking bastards. They suck so bad. And they're like a non-profit. Like, it's interesting to see how the struggle manifests in different ways around the world, because here, like, they're going against a corporate landlord who are just an investment firm. And then, like, here in London, Clarion are like a non-profit and they're a housing association. So you assume that they would be there to help the tenants, and they're like awful. I've heard these stories about
Yeah,
just like it's raining indoors because their pipes are that leaky, and like
Yeah.
there's no lights and there's mold, and this is all in one apartment, and she's got kids as well and shit like this, and
yeah.
it's just the fucking worst.
Hmm.
So they're a
Fuck landlords
non-profit,
is my
but
point,
there's like,
really.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, there's something going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's a huge W,
Mhm.
huge W. what is this? Someone in the chat saying, what is it? JMM1610 says Veritas has also been the ones that had the cops strip the tents from SF underbridge homeless. So there we go. So Veritas,
Makes sense.
huge, because yeah, that'll be like their property values going down because of
Right.
homeless population, etc., etc.
Right.
The next one is I accidentally put the wrong link in the notes before, but I just replaced it. Over in Chile, where Gabriel Boric just got in. This is like something where it's like still kind of like within electoral politics. So like, well, I mean, this is what this episode's going to be all about.
Right.
So,
That's true.
But I just think that it's really interesting that so that's the wrong link that's up there. If you have a look at the notes, it's yeah. So
it's in that was...
Maya Fernandez.
Okay, can someone link it in the shadowy cabal so I can make sure I can pull up the right one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, sorry, I just put it in the notes. But yeah, anyway, Maya Fernandez, granddaughter of Salvador Allende. Allende, is that how you say it? Allende?
I think so.
Yes, Allende.
Will be the new Minister of Defense. So yeah, Salvador Allende was the socialist president of Chile, like in the 70s, who got removed from government by a far right coup.
Well, it's an interesting thing. There's like a big sculpture of his glasses with a bullet hole in one of the lenses. In I think one of the Chilean government buildings. I think that's what it was. But it's somewhere anyway, because it's like he killed himself while the coup was happening. And it's like, yeah, by putting a gun up to his eye, right? Sure,
yeah,
guys.
sure.
Yeah,
like
do it.
100%.
Yeah. That's how people do that. That's
yeah.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, it's like one of those things, and she's a member of the Socialist Party. So it's like, yeah, this is still kind of like. I mean, so he just released his cabinet ministers and everything like that, like within the last week. And there's ups and downs in there. There's some people that are good. There's some people, but it's just like, this is electoralism, right?
Right.
So yeah, which is something we'll probably be talking a little bit more about in this episode. But I think that's kind of an interesting thing, and I think it kind of also signals like Chile is going through this kind of this swing back left at the moment, and it's kind of seen as like a coming home kind of thing, for like socialism in Chile. So I thought this was like a really interesting kind of thing where it's like literally like the descendants of Allende himself is coming back.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite protest sign I ever saw was one against the previous regime, where someone with a sign said, "Neoliberalism was born in Chile and it will die in Chile." And I'm like, oh, that's good. Oh, I mean,
that's why it's such a dub, right? Because it's like, again, it's like, this is where neoliberalism started. It's so huge for the people there.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of people being really dismissive and just being like, "Well, it's not a revolution." And it's like, yeah, but I think it's definitely going to make probably going to make life better for a lot of people at the moment. So like we got to take the dubs where we can.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it does. We are here to talk today about when electoralism does matter. But also, like just one brief pause, and I'll try and make the whole of the shock doctrine really concise here. But like we in the imperial core often think of in neoliberalism as a market mode where like we just I don't fucking know, what is it, fetishism of the marketplace, thinking that the free market can solve every problem. Like it's just hardcore liberalism. But that's not the whole history of it. Like outside the imperial core, where we have all these wonderful free market solutions, they were doing genocides to like make this shit happen and enforce it on the whole world. And the first one the first horrific regime of torture and rape and murder that they implemented was in Chile. And that's, so honestly, turning that shit back, even if it's through electoralism,
it's better than nothing, right? It's better than nothing, yeah. And it kind of it's something that people in the imperial core love to criticize all the time, innit? Like you say, like people, they're just like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong." Like Tim said, some people are criticizing it, saying, "No, it's not a revolution." Like, well, what do you want? Like, what kind of a revolution do you want? Do you know what I mean? Like,
and I'm sure there's like people over there that are still pushing towards, revolutionary socialism or whatever project they got going. Like, there's like, like just because this is happening doesn't mean they're, like they put that on pause or anything like that.
Right.
But and Box Full of Leaves in the chat also points out that between this, Peru, Bolivia, and the possible Lula election in Brazil, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of South America. It would be amazing to see a kind of South America that is kind of getting back to socialism.
A sort of red continent, if you will. Maybe the red is spreading and we'll actually end up with some kind of whole
like a planet,
I lost the thought. I lost the
Yeah, what could it be?
It's gone.
But yeah, no, and so we had some other little things. I just did, I asked a question on Twitter about, like, what are some good things that happened this week? And so we got, there's a bunch of, like, people that said some really good personal news, which is great, but there was, a couple good things in here. There was, they just started the HIV mRNA vaccine trials yesterday, which is great. That's, like, a huge thing there. There was a Long Island Amazon branch forced to vote on unionization. That's great. And what else? There was some good stuff. Butterflies have taken over Melbourne. Always good.
Good. Fuck yeah. Something happened last week, which I didn't announce in the middle of the show because I wasn't sure about how professional it would be of me to talk about, but I sent Muel the link to it. And then, so if you watch the VOD back from last week, you can see me watching the camera really closely while I wait for Muel to see the link. And then he's like cracking up, and then I'm cracking up, but you can see it at the one point in the VOD. Anyway, the lead of famous neo-Nazi band Screwdriver got COVID and died because he wasn't vaccinated, and he said COVID was just a lefty Jewish plot. And honestly, fuck that guy.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, Screwdriver are fucking terrible. They, I mean, if you're not familiar with them, they're probably the biggest, most influential neo-Nazi music act, ever. Throughout, punk, heavy metal, and all this kind of stuff. A lot of, even, NSBM and stuff, a lot of guys that became big in that scene all came from, Screwdriver tribute bands and shit like that, and it's, they were, an immense force. And there's, this weird thing where a lot of people will, even non-racist people will be like, oh yeah, but their first album was really sick though. But it's not. It's shit. And I think it's they kind of got worshipped because they were the first band, and they were the only band in that kind of scene that there was for a long time, so people kind of deified them. And it was one of those things, how people just kind of make excuses because they're like, oh yeah, but they got some good riffs or whatever. It's no, they don't.
So I just want to clarify as well, because there's some people in the chat, it's Screwdriver with a K, right?
Yes.
Just so because there's every chance that someone out there might be a little startup musician calling themselves Screwdriver. They have no idea about this guy.
Good guy, Muel.
It's Screwdriver with a K.
But just remember, not here to talk about the very, very funny death of
the Jewish communist plot that took down Screwdriver. Fuck, I wish. Hey, that would be a really good Inglourious Bastards kind of movie,
right.
A bunch of communist punks take out Screwdriver. Fuck yeah, that would be awesome.
Someone said that giant pandas aren't endangered anymore.
So
that's a
nice.
dub.
Yeah.
That's a huge dub.
Right. But we're not here to talk about the very, very funny death of Big Merv from Screwdriver. We are here to talk about non-reformist reforms.
Yes.
A confusing term, right?
It is. Muel was asking me about it the other day, and he kind of had it the other way.
How did you think it was?
Which way around did you think it was?
I thought it was when... No, I can't remember. Because
you thought it was
just remember
a
the
reform that does absolutely nothing.
Yes.
Therefore, it doesn't even reform anything. But it's reforms don't even really...
Oh,
that's everything. That's all the policies, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
We were all pretty black-pilled on electoralism, right? Chat, we're all pretty black-pilled at this point.
That's how black-pilled I was. I just thought it was it's something that won't do anything.
It's
like most reforms.
Give me a 1 in
It's just
chat
a
if you
regular
vote for the
reform,
Democrat who blasts you in the ass, or a 0 if you vote for the Republican who blasts you in the ass. There you go. It's all just one big ass blast. Wonderful. But sometimes something comes along which is not useless, and it's really important to know which is which. And that's what this episode is about. That's what the show this week is going to be about, is knowing which policies matter, and therefore knowing when it's worthwhile to engage with electoralism at all. Right.
It's this probably fits into it, right? But like, Jeremy Corbyn, right, as an example of like someone who wanted to bring in policies that were non-reformist reform.
Yes.
And in terms of things like I don't know, for example, free broadband, right? Free broadband is like a thing that will affect lots of poor people in a positive way, and will, as you said when you were explaining it to me the other day, it will aid a lot more people to be part of movements, right? It will actually like help us in our message of like, if Jeremy Corbyn got through, and if the free broadband thing got through, then think about how many people will be watching Red Planet right now, right?
True, and that would be based. But we have some criteria we'll probably go over in a little bit about what makes something a non-reformist reform, and then FD Sig will come on, and he's like super well educated about the Medicare system, like the whole medical system in the UK and in the US, and so he's going to tell us all about that, and it's going to be great. But first, I just want to make a distinction between this and harm reduction, because we all had a big conversation about harm reduction, right? Last time the elections were going around. And so if we take, for example, Jeremy Corbyn again, the pandemic started, right? And we knew shit was coming. And maybe this is a little anachronistic to exactly when this is a little wrong for when we actually knew the pandemic was coming. But like the 2019 election was just a few months before the pandemic started. So in hindsight, right, we could say one good reason to vote for Jeremy Corbyn is he definitely would have dealt with the pandemic way better, right, than the Tories did. And that would be a harm reduction discussion. And we're not here to talk about harm reduction today. I'm not saying harm reduction isn't a valid point. I'm also not saying it's true. I'm not saying anything that's not the conversation this is. That's why I want to distinguish this. So I'm going to mention it again. I will definitely say it right at the end. But the homework this week is going to be for people who are interested in doing it. Again, homework's not mandatory, but go and look at the electoral politics around you, basically, right? That means what could be passed, what has been discussed before, and try and identify non-reformist reforms. Shit that would actually free people up to engage in class struggle. It would actually get people having a better life, having a freer life, where they'd be able to go and help other people to also get free, right? And so maybe that's something we can discuss kind of for the rest of the time, maybe chat with Chad about it as well. Maybe chat also let us know if you're still not quite clear on what makes a non-reformist reform. But maybe we want to chat about our own local policy options, and where that, if we can identify them. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's an idea.
It's really tough in the UK, for example, because two-party system, and the main opposition at the minute is completely toothless, right, in all of their policies. In fact, I'd be hard pressed to actually name a Labour policy at the moment.
Integrity or something.
Integrity, normal.
No, that's austerity. It's something different.
Yeah, authority, normal. Integrity, austerity. That's their motto.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's so it's really hard. But there are other political parties in the UK other than the two-party system. So I guess I could advocate a little bit for the Northern Independence Party. One of the main policies of the Northern Independence Party is that basically London-centric politics in this country increasingly deprive the north of England from all kinds of public services. Every single aspect of public funding is dramatically lower than in London and in the home counties, right? So the Northern Independence Party is fundamentally right, well, essentially what we'll do is just basically demand in Parliament while they're working towards getting elected. It's going to be tough. They're a real fringe party if they're going to actually get elected, but if they get MPs, it will be to put on the table things like, listen, we need more devolution in the North. We need more funding from Westminster, that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff would lift a lot of people in the North of England out of poverty.
Yeah.
Then if they're going to be lifted out of poverty, that obviously like gives people a bit more free time, right? You know, the more money you have, the less time you need to spend working, etc., etc. I don't need to, you know, tell chat why that's great, obviously, because then they can go and get involved in other aspects of great, you know, obviously like things we spoke about, mutual aid networks, and go and help people do strike solidarity with like renters unions and stuff, right?
And this is another great example of like the difference between being invested in like the personality of a politician or a party versus the policies. Because I agree with everything Muel just said about the Northern Independence Party and their potential, but I also know a lot of people who have deep concerns about the Northern Independence Party's like trustworthiness, and like so I would absolutely co-sign everything Muel just said, and that doesn't mean I'm saying go like join the party, spend all of your time like door knocking for them and this shit, right? Because this conversation is all about how much of electoralism is worth your time, right? And I'm just gonna say like who the audiences we're speaking to right now, because like obviously some assumptions we're making rely on the idea that there are already a ton of people who are spending their time on electoral politics. Like FD was saying about working with so many leftists who do care about stuff and who are trying to change something for the better. And those people are there, and they're still going to be there. And I'm not trying to talk those people out of being there, but I don't think those people are really listening to me anyway, right? By contrast, if you're like looking for something, a way to get out in the real world and help people immediately, I'm like, don't go door knock for a party. Like, don't. You know? Right. And then so when electoral politics is worth your while, if you're that kind of person, who I think is our audience, right? When it's worth your while is when there's a possibility of a non-reformist reform, and it's about policy, and it's not about believing in a party or a politician.
Like it sucks because there's no way that that's even going to get close to getting put through. Do you know what I mean? But it's an example of a policy that would absolutely benefit if it was run.
If it was possible, exactly.
Like if it was something that Keir Starmer tomorrow was like, I'm going to do that, it would be like, well, sucks. I got to vote for this guy. You know what I mean? So
I vote, especially as a former like I lost my my liberal card with Obama, and kind of like watching the way that played out. Like now I vote with the same like energy that I like put ketchup on fries versus barbecue sauce. You know, it doesn't like I the thing I've always been kind of annoyed, and this may be just my boomer take, with like the energy people put into voting or not voting. It doesn't require that much energy unless you're like going to, knock on doors and fucking going to campaign trails and shit. Like never do that shit ever. But like on the fucking, and then if you don't feel like voting because it just doesn't serve you in your spirit, then don't vote. And if you feel like voting, like it takes, it's where you live, it takes half a day or 30 minutes, and it's one day out the year. And it doesn't make a difference to much, but the handful of things it might make a difference to, something like HUD in the States. Trump gutted HUD. You know what I'm saying? That made a difference. Fucking abortion, the 3 Supreme Court justices kind of made a difference. What else? Would we have stopped the encroachment of neoliberal fascism in America with Hillary versus Trump? No. But Texas may still have an abortion laws, so I think we need to disengage. I think that's a really an example, at least here in the States, of how like bought into these systemic frameworks we are, that we really attach voting to our identity. I'm a vote or die, you know what I'm saying? Versus like, I don't give a fuck. I prefer barbecue sauce on my fries, but I'm not gonna eat fries most of the year.
Right.
I want to read Jameson's comment because it. Did you have anything else to say about
that?
Okay, great. So Jameson was big in the Bernie Sanders campaign. And he says that when I was knocking on doors for DSA on behalf of the Bernie campaign, we used to talk about non-reformist reforms to try and get them involved in our housing and homelessness subcommittee. to get people invested in local politics in LA. The campaign was the pretext to knock on doors, but the goal was to get them involved. So I wanted to read that because I think that sometimes, I don't know how I'm still trying to work out the kinks with my feelings on electoralism, like how much is like a waste and so on and so forth. But I don't really have any super strong feelings, so I'm not really gonna like give my personal takes on any of that. But I will say that I do think that knocking on doors for a politician, strictly for the politician, is maybe a different thing than knocking on doors because of the politician, but you're doing it also to get people involved in a bigger like movement or to get them inspired to get involved in local politics and so on and so forth.
Yes. So that's all really, really interesting. However, Jamo, I'm going to roast you now because I just did an interview with Common Humanity Collective for organizing interviews, and it's actually coming out this Friday. And we don't talk about this exactly like totally in the interview, but if you listen to if you watch my interview and you listen to the episode where they were interviewed on It Could Happen Here, you'll kind of get the full picture. And like those people like were involved with like one of the founders was like deeply involved with the Bernie campaign. Another one of the people I spoke to was super involved with DSA, and they found DSA super limiting, and just like they were desperate to just like help people and really, really help people. And DSA's process and frankly their politics and a whole bunch of shit just like wouldn't let them actually help people. And so I feel and I feel like they are a really clear case of exactly what I'm talking about, where like there are definitely people who are in the reform world, and I don't think a lot of them are kind of in my audience, right? Or in this audience. And by contrast, like if you're going out and knocking on doors, like if you've got that spirit, like a lot of people are gonna want to go more directly to the place where they're actually helping someone. So like CHC, for example, made masks to give out for free, and then they made air purifiers because they're in what's it called? The Bay Area, right? And so there's fires, so like this stuff. You know, I feel like a lot of the time people who are kind of invested in helping people are gonna go way more directly for the helping people directly, right?
Okay, interesting.
It's just a counterpoint. I don't disagree like wholeheartedly. I was joking about roasting. Like I agree with the message, and then I wanted to add on, like I feel like you're always going to have people that are just frustrated and they just got to like move past that stuff. Like like the DSA was the literal example, and it was people who worked on the Bernie campaign. So it was really interesting. Like those people are just like, this isn't enough. This is just isn't helping.
You know,
anybody.
but that's real and that's valuable, because that's a part of my conversion to the left myself is the Bernie evangelicals that I trusted. Another problem. Bernie, I did not have good experiences with Bernie bros. Soured me on them pretty much from jump. But I met enough over time that whatever word it is, where it was part of what pulled me into like engaging more and identifying more as a leftist. Was that experience. So if you do have a candidate that happens to sneak through the cracks, much like Bernie did, kind of, you know, shock, you know, Bernie, for any criticism that you might have of him, it was a paradigm shift in American politics. Where,
totally.
You know, openly socialist, you know, quasi-communist rhetoric and policies were being introduced into the mainstream. And that's, you know, recuperation and a lot of other things, but it also like reframed the discourse in the States and reframed the youth's engagement with politics and policy to a great extent. So like there's
he was bringing conversations in that just like you would never have expected to happen a couple years earlier, right? Like
totally,
somebody in Buffalo, New York, I think was elected on an explicitly socialist platform. There's like problems after the fact, but like that's a thing. You can look that up.
I want
just gonna pop to the toilet.
Okay. All right. I want to read Jameson's comment, just so we can make sure we have doesn't feel like he can't say his part. He says to Sophie, "I'll have to give your video a watch. I would say my experience and what DSA does here could be wildly different. Did a whole squatting campaign tactic to get people housing, then fought the police when they were getting evicted at gunpoint. So that sounds pretty based." And this is the thing, like, I can never take, I've never been involved with the DSA, but like, I've heard a variety of things, and I think it's tough because the DSA there's so many chapters. There are always different people joining and leaving. Like, it's hard to ever really get a coherent picture of like what it is, and maybe that's because there is no coherent picture of what it is. Perhaps, I don't know.
I think it varies greatly from chapter to chapter for a lot. And from what I've seen from you know, people that I know over in the States and stuff. So it's quite hard to make a blanket statement.
There's a few things I want to reference now, which I usually try and give book recs whenever I can throughout the stream. I've got 2 book recommendations, and I've also got a quote which I'm trying to find. So sorry if I don't find this, but I'll carry on looking anyway. But basically, so the first book rec is "Searching for Socialism: The Project of the Labor New Left from Ben to Corbyn" by Leo Panich and Colin Lays. Nat got this for me. It's very good. And the other one, so that's very UK focused, obviously. The other one I think is called Our Revolution, which is by Bernie Sanders. And I think that both of these give really good perspectives, which are from the point of view of non-reformist reforms. Like they are by people who are fully in the electoral world, but they are all about actually trying to help people with policy, like places where policy actually means something rather than just playing the endless circle jerk of politician nonsense, right? And the quote I'm trying to find, so if anybody in chat finds this faster, is Noam Chomsky describing Bernie's kind of legacy, even after the movement. Because this is an interesting thing. Actually, this might help people find it. There is a slightly altered version on the front of the Punished Bernie Ammon Animations video. It's slightly altered because it talks about gamer rights instead. Anyway, Bernie's really interesting because it absolutely mobilized so many people, and then so many people became like really frustrated and want to go do other shit. And it's really interesting when we talk about dual power, right? Because we're trying to talk about like a sense of continuity, but all these people feel like they've had a really chaotic journey, and yet everyone's having that same journey. Like there's a huge number of people having the exact same journey where they go, I protested BLM, or I voted for Bernie, or I was at Occupy, or all three, and many other things. But it didn't go to the next level almost, right? Like Bernie didn't get in, or like they bailed out the banks, or they didn't defund the police, right? Kind of things. And they were like, so they're like, well, where do I go now? And then they find other stuff. And in CHC's example, like they're building a mutual aid network, which is fucking awesome. But it's kind of an interesting thing that like the place where like populism can actually help electoralism is so limited, right? Like there's the Bernie campaign, but then as soon as it's like they're not selecting Bernie, he becomes someone who's just like, you just have to trust in his judgment. Like, so this is what I wanted to read the quote for, and I will still try and go find it, but I guess it might become redundant now. Basically, Chomsky talks about the things that Bernie has done from within the administration now, because he's got a role to do with like, he might be secretary for economics something, I don't know, but he's got a position where he can actually make pretty meaningful policies, and all the best stuff from the Biden administration more or less is coming straight from him. Like, as much as there's any good shit coming from Biden's administration, it's coming directly from Bernie. And it's really interesting because it's like all the people who feel frustrated absolutely should, right? And all the people who feel let down absolutely should, and disillusioned with electoral politics, I also think absolutely should. But also on some level they achieved a huge part of their goal, because their guy did get into government and is helping people directly now. It's just that like you actually can't engage at this point with helping Bernie do his job because he's just in a job now, right? And it's kind of like if there was a culture of direct action that sometimes lent some energy to electoralism, the people would have a sense of continuity, right? Like, I think one dream I have for Red Planet is if by the next election cycle, the whole online left couldn't, like, we could have not the whole online left talk about the election, right? Like, if Red Planet does well, right, then a good standard for success would be if we could maybe be a safe place for people who want to talk politics but don't want to just talk about the fucking election all the time. Right? If we were here and we were like, people are doing these cool things and there have been these wins and these unions have gotten these things and blah blah blah, right? Then people could come here instead of just talking about harm reduction and the Democrats and why Hillary Clinton is evil and blah blah blah. And of course the Republican guy is evil. That's what they do. They put an evil guy in. But is it actually maybe better to vote for that guy than the neoliberal Democrat? No, it isn't. But anyway, let's like and on and on and on. And it's just like fucking. Can we talk about something else?
Escalated. Like, guys, I need to go put kids to bed with my wife.
Okay.
Things like that. This was awesome and cathartic and
yay!
But also like the opposite of doomerism.
That's good.
We
That's
are.
what we're trying to do.
Absolutely the opposite of doomer.
Hell yeah!
2 weeks ago, we did Against the Black Pill with Thoughts Line. That was the topic of the week. It's a huge focus. We're trying to fight doomerism here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There's an algorithm loves it, but fuck the algorithm.
But we're gonna make a space where people love not doomer hope, where people love hope. I forgot the word. I was like, what's not doomerism? What's the opposite of that?
Yeah. Right. That's what's that? That's like doomer realism, where you can't conceive.
Anyways, let's get some claps in the chat. Bun clap or bun clap F if you're not a sub. Thank you, F.D Signifier, for coming, staying with or joining us today. I really appreciated your input. I think I can speak for everyone when I say that. And did you, I don't know if you have time to quickly shout out your channel and where we can find you, or if you don't have time, we can do it for you, but you gotta send
Yes, I am F.D Signifier on YouTube. I think if you do it with or without the period, it's fine. Signifier is spelled properly, at least on YouTube. But, it seems like I'll come up if you spell it any of the numerous ways that comes up. I'm releasing a video about Black love stuff and on Valentine's Day, and then probably I don't know if I'll take a break for Obama, and then I'm gonna talk about Obama and bare my soul, get cursed out by some friends and aunties, and then maybe get cursed out by some leftists at the same time because it's complicated, at least for me. We'll see. Yeah, be on the lookout. All right, y'all, let me go. Love y'all.
All right, cool. We'll see you later.
See you later.
And as you will soon find out, you cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot see.